Welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly podcast featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from fresh perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 278, My Ultimate Goal, Living from the Center. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I'm also lovingly known as RCA. I am the host. I'm here today in 818 Studios with my producer.
Good morning, everybody. This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey. As always, we welcome you to a brand new week, and we love being some of the first voices you hear throughout the week. I don't know, or maybe it's a Thursday, and we're... The
and you're listening
350th voice you've heard all the week. I don't know. But it's really good to be with you.
It is. It's good to be with you, friends. And we're just honored that people all over the country are joining us. We love to do shout outs all around the country and around the world. And
even from other countries, such as, I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm sure there's a fancy English way to pronounce this, but Ruislip? Hillingdon, which is a borough of West London. It's in West London. So, hello,
cool,
West
cool.
London.
Hello, West London. Yes, it's been years since I've been to London. Wow. There is a silent unity, by the way, in England, a second silent unity, which is interesting. So, friends, I don't know if those folks in London, our listeners in London, know about it, but there has been, in fact, a silent unity across the pond, as they say.
Yeah, so we say hello to our friends in Ruislip. I'm sure, like Worcester.
please correct us.
All right, Worcester and
They're
Birmingham.
like dumb Americans, you know.
We're like Birmingham.
Right.
Birmingham.
Birmingham, exactly. Yep. Well, and of course, Dave, that's my heritage. I'm English, Scottish, Irish, you know, and there's a home in. I'm trying to think of where. I think it is in London, but it's called, well, I'm going to have to look that up and put it in the show notes, but I think it's called the Cecil Sharp House. And Cecil Sharp was a collector of tunes in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He was going around the mountains of North Carolina, Virginia. And what he was doing is collecting songs that had been brought over from Europe. And my great-grandmother and great-aunt were recorded, and those songs are now in the Library of Congress. But Cecil Sharp, went around. There were a couple people that went around collecting tunes, but I believe there's a Cecil Sharp house in England.
Yeah. Yep, I've got it. We'll have a link in the show notes.
Awesome. So, and it says, private residents don't knock, but when my family's over there, we knock on the door and say we're the great-grandson or great-granddaughter, in my case, of Jane Gentry, and they open the door and say, come right in,
That's so cool.
Yeah, a lot of family history there, and wow, I've studied family history I've gotten back to the 1600s in England and in Scotland. So anyway, friends, welcome along the show today. It's always great to have you along. And I'm pretty excited about today's show. We've had some amazing shows and guests lately, and I'm still vibing from the live one. That was a lot of fun. And it just always does my heart good to see you all in person. That said, if you live in an area that you think you could sponsor me coming in person, let's work that out. Because if I can be there in person, we can collect audio. Dave later will clean it up and put it on the show. So think about that. Or if there's your business that I could come in and support with a motivational seminar, I love to do that. And I just re-listened to Simon Bailey's show. That was a lot of fun. He's a great guy, great guest, and also doing, some really cool work in the world. So Yeah. And we'll have links to that in the show. Now, that was episode 276 a few weeks ago, and Simon's great. And he's got his eyeglass game is on point. So if you've not watched the video, he has a very, very cool glass. He does. Well, Dave, give us, and by the way, I was in another call with Simon recently, and he really supported the podcast and is going to be sharing it on social media. So that's awesome. So give us our show title today, Dave.
Yeah, the title for today is My Ultimate Goal, Living
Go ahead.
From the Center. Sorry,
Dave,
there was a parenthesis. There's a subtitle. I've got to work the subtitle.
Sorry,
My Ultimate Goal, Living from the Center.
My ultimate goal, living from the center. Yes, friends. So I say I'm excited. I am hopeful about today's message because I have worked with this concept for a very, very long time. And it's something I strive for. It's something I'm attracted to, working with, seeking to do and be. And I want to share it with you. I've done one topic. I mean, it was several years ago, I think. But friends, my ultimate goal is living from the center. Living from the center. And so what does this mean? Well, it really means that I am seeking to become a conscious being. I'm seeking to become a conscious being. And by conscious, I don't only mean spiritual. I mean, I am awake. I am aware. It has to do with my health. It has to do with living from my soul rather than the personality. And in a word, that's really what conscious means in my definition of it. To be conscious means that I'm seeking to live beyond the personality, meaning I'm seeking to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. So rather than basing my life and my world on what other people think, rather than basing my life and my world on how much money I make, rather than basing my life and world on ego and personality wants, I am seeking to live beyond the external and from the internal, which means living from spirit, which means living from soul. So it's moving beyond the material world and living from the center of who I am. At the center of who I am is soul. At the center of who I am is spirit. So I want to just differentiate those terms for those of you who might be new to some of these teachings. So spirit really is the unchanging aspect of us. That's what we call God. And our soul is our individual expression. It includes our memories, our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our ideas. But our soul is the connecting point between this material world and spirit, right? So when I say I'm, rather than living from the world, I'm living from spirit. Spirit is my source. In other words, you've heard me say probably before, God is my source. God, spirit, those words are interchangeable. If you grew up in church, you heard Father, Son, Holy Ghost, right? So those words very often are interchangeable. So when I'm talking about living from the center is where I know God. It is where I know my wholeness. It is where I connect with all that is in a time of prayer or meditation. And my personality is the limited self that has been created through life's hard knocks, you know. Personality was developed through how I was raised, through my birth order, through what race even I might have been born in. And there are certain cultural understandings, certain cultural leanings, even based on, what culture we're born in. Or as my friend Simon says, the pigment of my skin might even decide certain aspects of the personality based on that particular culture. And there's so many subcultures now, like if you grow up, speaking of growing up in a borough, if you grow up in the Bronx, New York, it's a different subculture than if you grow up in Red Oak, Georgia. And those experiences shape the personality. The personality is the outer way that we choose to express in the world. It's the outer way that we learned to get our most intimate needs met based on how we were raised, right? So you can see how, even with that description, that the personality is very, very limited, and the spirit of us, which is God himself, right? That's always available to us, always unfolding us, always surrounding us, that God himself is so much more powerful than this limited, I'll call it worldly, for lack of a better word, worldly identity called the personality. And so the personality has a lot of protections. The personality is always trying to survive. The personality is how we've been known in the past. And so if you're really seeking to become conscious, like so many of you are, like I am seeking to do, that you have to learn then to move into a process of surrender. To move into a process of surrender. And surrender is a key in the process of becoming conscious. You cannot become conscious without surrender. Surrender means I undergo change at the level of the personality by seeking to be vulnerable. To surrender is a vulnerable move, right? Right. Let me say again that surrender is a key to the process of becoming conscious. I'm repeating this because as I've learned in my own journey, listening to other podcasts, when something is repeated, especially because I'm listening, I can take it in a deeper way than if I hear it once. It's like if I hear it once, I can gloss over it, but we can't gloss over surrender when we're talking about becoming conscious beings, because it is the one necessary ingredient. Even when I say this about surrender, I can feel my personality start to get afraid, So fear is the language of the personality. Fear and doubt, really. And of course, what's doubt is just fear. Yeah. Fear is the language of the personality. So when I say the word surrender, everything in us goes, oh no, I don't want to do that, right? Just even hearing the word sometimes. But what I have really come to know through working with so many people, in a coaching environment and a spiritual environment in the church, is that at some point, most of us said we wanted awakening or enlightenment. And if we have said we want an awakening and enlightenment, then at that moment, the universe began to move. Another way we've asked it is, what is it that God wills for me? That's been a standard question of virtually everybody I've worked with. It's like, what is my purpose here on planet Earth? Do I have a purpose? What is God's will for me? What is it that God wills for me to do in this situation? Is a question I often get asked. So, we have this world that we have to maintain and live in, and we have this whole other spiritual reality and nature. And so when we seek to live this spiritual life, and when we say, with faith and with courage, what is it that God wills for me? We set the course really for the rest of our lives without even knowing it. It's often a very naive statement we're making, but the good news is the soul hears it, and that's when we begin to start to wake up and become more enlightened. And by enlightened, I don't mean sitting on a cloud chanting the Om or something. By enlightened, I mean we begin to see our old patterns that are in the way of us moving forward. In other words, those patterns that may be in the way of us becoming more conscious. So as we learn and grow on the journey, and many of you have heard my journey along the way, I've made mistakes. I've learned from those mistakes. Well, that is my process of becoming conscious. Dave has shared some of his process of becoming conscious. So what's so amazing is that the universe is so intimately connected with us that it is conspiring to bring us into consciousness. Like literally, as we said, what is it that God's will is for me? I want to become conscious. I want to be awakened. Maybe we've said, I want to live a spiritual life, or I want to live as the Christ. I want to know my spiritual self. And whatever way we've said it, the universe immediately began to conspire to bring us into consciousness. And I'm saying all this because I think sometimes we feel like we're like trudging like trudging along all alone, but that the experiences that the universe is bringing us, even though they're difficult, even though they're arduous, it's an arduous process at times, that it is moving us into more personal and spiritual awareness, which again is what I'm calling becoming conscious. It is what I'm calling living from the center. What is important to remember is that the spirit of you, the soul of you, is much stronger than the ego and the personality. So a question you might be asking, which would be an obvious question, is, so what does it really mean? Like, I'm hearing you, but what does it mean to be conscious? And I wanted to share a few questions I've been asking myself. And I say I've been asking myself. As I ask myself these questions, I want to be clear. This didn't start yesterday or a week ago. This started in the year 2000 that I started asking these questions. And it was from a mentor that worked with me through her teachings. And the questions are so simple, you might be surprised. For instance, one of the first questions I ask myself is what I'm doing helping me become conscious, or is it not helping? So simple. Like, if I'm feeling a resistance, my first question is to ask, is what I am doing helping me become conscious, or is it not helping? In other words, am I interfering with my own goal of becoming conscious by being stuck in my personality wants and desires? And, often in New Thought, we talk about our needs, goals, and desires and how they're holy, and they are, but there's also a divine desire, and there's also a real worldly desire. I mean, an alcoholic desires a drink, but I think we could all agree that that's not a higher desire and would not take someone into consciousness. What would take somebody into consciousness, if you're an alcoholic and you want to drink and you don't drink, that's the state of becoming conscious. Being aware of the desire, and then you go into that desire and you say, what am I really wanting? Well, I'm really wanting connection, or maybe life feels hard and I want to check out. So maybe I need to touch in with a counselor or a friend or a sponsor or a meeting. That's how consciousness becomes real. So you're seeing, I'm hoping you're relating your own journey to this. So again, asking myself, is what I'm doing helping me become conscious, or is it not helping? Another way of asking that is, am I interfering with my becoming conscious by being stuck in the personality? And friends, this is an uncomfortable question because we have to take our own inventory. We have to get honest. You have to really want to move out of denial to get what I'm saying about this. Sometimes I have to ask the question in another way, like, okay, am I in the ego and personality, or am I in the soul right now? Because it feels like I really want this, but I think I'm somehow in some heightened state, some elevated emotional state. And what I know for me is, if I'm in an elevated emotional state, I'm in the personality, because the Spirit of God does not fret. The Spirit of God is not unclear. So when we're seeking to become conscious, we want to begin to move out of that state to check in then with the soul and spirit of us, before we make any big decisions. I've talked before about the spiritual thermometer as a tool with that. That's like, okay, where are you, on the spiritual thermometer? If you're under a 5, do not pass go, do not make decisions. If you're in anger, resentment, or fear, or trauma, So again, you're learning to, and I'm learning, not just you, I'm learning to discern, when am I in the personality? Am I helping? Am I not helping? Then I can shift. And sometimes just asking myself, like sometimes throughout the course of a day, if I'm really working something specifically, I'll ask myself, can I state what I've been doing in the last hour? And if I can't, that means I was unconscious. That means I was going through life completely unaware. But if I can state what I was doing, it means I was awake, I was aware, and I was present. And that's usually the last question I get to is, am I present right now to what is? Am I right here, right now? And we keep coming back to that idea. I've talked about it with the basketball kids. I've talked about it on the show, A New Day. It's like, okay, something new cannot come forward for me if I'm in the personality and stuck in the past. So am I present to what is right here, right now? And when I can be present to that, all is well. All is well. I know how to make a decision. I know what is mine to do, when, and how to do it. When I'm here now, I'm connected with spirit. When I'm here now, I'm vulnerable. I'm open to feedback. I can discern what is personality and what is, emotion and what is soul. So this is the space we want to get to. And friends, nobody does this perfectly. I don't do it perfectly. But what I have is a process, and the process serves as an anchor for getting back to being conscious again. I'm like everybody else. I have needs, wants, and desires. Sometimes things happen when I want them. Sometimes they don't. And then I have to deal with my reaction. Then I have to deal with that. So to be able just in general to ask these questions I'm talking about, is what I'm doing helping? Is what I'm doing not helping in becoming conscious? Am I interfering with, what I want to be doing? Am I listening to the soul or the ego? All these questions are going to require a great deal of vulnerability and effort at times. So I said earlier, it's arduous. And I'm sure somebody's going to say, well, don't say it's hard. No, I'm giving you a fact. If I'm pretending the spiritual journey is always easy, you're going to say, well, if you're going through a tough time, you're going to say, I'm never listening to her again. Right? And I would get that because, boy, it's anything but easy. Having said that, though, there is a calm and there is a peace and there is an ease and grace about coming back to these ideas, coming back to the soul, because that's where the peace is. So yes, it can be hard to get there sometimes, but it's always there. So to surrender is going to take vulnerability and effort. To become conscious is going to take vulnerability and effort. But again, the reminder for us is the soul is able to do this. That when you said a long time ago, I want to live a spiritual life, remember this, the universe began to shift and prepare the way for you. When you said, what is it that God wills for me? It may have been 30 or 40 years ago, but the process as you grow and develop, the process as you evolve, is finding this out on more and more subtle levels. I mentioned on the show with Simon, and I'll just mention it again, that in my recent release work, some of the release work was so touching and so beautiful because I was remembering beautiful things from my history as a child. And a lot of times when I've gone back and done the work, I'm remembering the bad stuff, and getting therapy and, cleaning it out and forgiving and blah, blah, blah. But this last release piece was so powerful because I was seeing some of the beauty of the past and how much it meant to me and how it was supporting me on a spiritual level that at the time I wasn't aware of in the way that I am now. And the work I'm doing now was more subtle than 5 years ago and certainly more than 10 years ago. So like at the beginning, when we start really becoming conscious, it's like we have one of those big backhoes. You know what a backhoe is? It's one of those big dumpster things that are a big, I don't even know what you call it, but a backhoe is like farm equipment, right? Where you're moving dirt from here to there. Yeah. You see it on a big construction site. It's like has a big bucket on the end. It moves big piles of dirt,
Earth mover, yeah.
Earth mover, yeah. So when you're really new at this, it seems like you're moving big piles of earth. And you move this from here to there and you go, see, okay, now I'm conscious. All right. And that's true. You're moving into consciousness. You're saying, I'm going to quit that addiction. All right, good. And you go, wow, life can be better. Well, then you start dealing with the things that you did when you were using or drinking or whatever your addiction was. And that's the next level of consciousness. Well, that gets to be kind of like you're using a little shovel and you're still moving stuff, but it's not as big and it may not be as noticeable to anybody else, but it is to you. Some of you have been doing the work so long, it's like you're on an archaeological dig and you got a little tiny paintbrush or toothbrush and you're getting down in there, these little tiny things, and you go, oh, there it is. And you say, I see that about myself. For instance, I saw recently a level of neediness that I wanted to heal. And that came through this recent release work. And just seeing it, I felt freed up, even though I know I have more work to do. Just seeing it, I said, oh, that is what has been motivating some of my behaviors. It was really, really helpful. Now, no one from the outside is going to know that, but I know it. And I know how it feels differently, literally in my mind, the way I think, it feels differently in my body. And so now that is the subtle level I'm working on. Like, what is motivating this behavior right now? And am I conscious or am I in my neediness? And that's just a straight process I'm in at the moment. And so, as I'm saying all these things, what I want to remind myself of and you is that as I look back over my life, and I'm only in my 50s, but as I look back over my life, I can see that when I'm in alignment with God, meaning the virtues of love, kindness, generosity, peace, discernment, that my life works really well for me. Doesn't mean I don't have challenges. It means I don't lose my cool. It means I maintain my center, which, remember we said, living from the center is my ultimate goal and has been since the year 2000. That's the first time I heard this concept, and I've been working on it ever since. So am I living from the personality or ego? Because I can tell when I look back, when I've been living from ego, things don't go well. It's pretty simple. When I'm living from personality and ego, I can cause hurt and I experience hurt. But I know that life doesn't have to be that hard. I know when I'm in personality and ego, there is no flow. I also know it doesn't have to be this way. So friends, in listening today, my hope for you is that you're going to hear, it is possible to live from spirit and soul. That it is possible to live into the question, what is it that God wills for me? And know that the universe is ultimately and intimately involved with you in your process. Like the universe loves you so much that when you set the course of your life, maybe many years ago, all of these things that are helping you grow, all these things that are helping you prosper and evolve are brought to you by the universe simply because you said, I want to know God. I want to be at peace with spirit. I want to live in the moment. I want to live a godly spiritual life. I want to know the Christ. And I want you to know, friends, absolutely, that the universe is involved with you in your process, that you are being guided, you are being supported, you are being blessed, and that the more you listen to your soul, the more room you will make for God's will in your life. You're not going to question, is it God's will? You're not going to question in every decision, what do I do? You're going to know because you're going to feel it in your mind and heart. You're going to feel the sense of peace in your body. You're going to know what to say. You're going to know what to do. You're going to know how to move forward. You are going to be guided. And friends, remember, I said, this is a process. It is a difficult process. It's going to require surrender, which surrender requires vulnerability and effort. So my hope for you is that you will continue to do the work, that you're going to be inspired and lifted by today, that like, you know what? I do want to be conscious. I do want to live from the center. I want to take better care of myself, my mind, my body, my soul. I want to take care of my family. And how do I do that? By learning new things, by becoming more conscious of how my behavior is limiting or how my behavior is helping. Simple questions. Am I helping? Am I not helping myself become more conscious? Meaning, am I helping myself to live from the center by my behavior, by my actions, by my beliefs? So friends, this is my hope for you, that you continue to seek to live from the center of your being, knowing that God's will for you is good, knowing that you started the course yourself of asking, what is it that God wills for me? And the universe wants to bring you this. The universe wants to bring you your good. And remember, you are guided, you are supported, you are blessed, dear friends. So I thank you for listening today. As always, we're blessed and honored that you join us along the journey. And as always, we're grateful for your financial support. I mean, the campaign just started today. And what is so amazing, the $9,000 in 90 days, is someone just gave $1,000. I don't think they had even heard it yet. And they had just given $1,000. So I can't tell you what that means for us getting the message out on more platforms, and it pays our studio fees and such as that, and it pays me. So thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your love. And we're honored to support your journey, the journey of the evolving soul. So friends, thanks again for joining us, and blessings on the journey, dear friends. We'll see you next week.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2023, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.